Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Team selector time for the game against Man United at Old Trafford in the Premier League on Sunday afternoon. A ground Chelsea haven't won at since May of 2013. I feel like I say that every time we go to Old Trafford, hoping that maybe this is the time the trend or the curse of Old Trafford ends. Maybe it will this time, maybe it won't. I think that's what makes this game always a cautious one going into it, because based on form, based on I think the quality of both teams' performances in the Premier League so far this year, I still think a lot of people will feel that Chelsea, maybe not strong favourites, but at the very least are a team you would back to get a positive result in this game. But it feels like when we play Man United, our level drops to theirs when they're most chaotic, and especially based on events over the past few days where Erik ten Hag has been sacked, Ruud van Nistelrooy, a club legend, has come in and overseen a very positive performance and result in the League Cup, and now they have Ruben Amorim, I think a very talented young head coach who'll be coming in at some point. I think in the next few weeks, he won't be there on Sunday. It maybe changes the dynamic and complexion of this game, which makes it, I think, an interesting one and a potentially dangerous one, I think, for Enzo Maresca, especially when you factor in what happened in midweek, where people feel very frustrated with the way Maresca, I think, approached that game. So we'll look at team news, we'll look at Manchester United, and I'll give you my predicted starting 11. As always, please do give me your thoughts and your predicted 11 in the comments below. Please do support the show. Also, you can go and listen to the Chelsea Echo, the podcast me and Louis Benavente do every Friday. There's also the voice notes review that comes out on Sunday after the game, so you can hear my thoughts and our discussions about Chelsea FC. So link in the description box below. And also, if you do want to support Son of Chelsea, you can do on Patreon. Really helps out the show financially if you do want to support it that way as well. But let's get into some team news. So the good thing is, seems like everyone's fine, and to be fair, that's been a trend so far this year that has helped Enzo Maresca. That rehabilitation program trend has not continued. Touch wood, that remains the case, because it is good to not have to remember a large list of players who aren't available. I think the one that isn't available is Jadon Sancho, because of course he's on loan from Man United. He isn't a permanent Chelsea player yet. We suspect he will be this time next year, but you know, he isn't, so I don't think he'll be starting, and obviously was ill in midweek. Let's look at the other thing that Maresca spoke about. Again, he reiterated there's no A and B team. I mean, I think until Maresca starts to mix and match those two teams, I think it is right to kind of refer to them as an A and B team, because it's been so clear so far this year. So I understand his frustration as a head coach, maybe that it's being referred to as that, but if we've looked at it, it has very much felt like two groups of players, and especially based on the performance on Sunday and the performance in midweek, it does feel like there's a discrepancy between both. So I think until that changes, we will look at it as kind of separate. I don't think people are being unfair by that, to be honest, because there isn't massive overlap. At least there is clearly an understudy team, and there's the Premier League team, and that's been clear. And I think will be clear when team news comes out on Sunday again, because I don't suspect radical change after the way we saw that team perform at St James's Park. But let's look at Man United. Difficult to predict, really difficult to predict, because of course it's an interim head coach in Van Nistelrooy, and there's a bit of freedom for those players, a little bit of freedom for Van Nistelrooy. You know, his job is not on the line like it was with the pressure building with Erik ten Hag. Maybe there's a sense of freedom and those players being let off a leash a little bit, with the sense of control that ten Hag had. The negative mood has maybe been lifted a little bit, and those players will feel like they're already auditioning for Ruben Amorim, who I'm sure will be watching from a distance. So we always see this in football, right? It's a cycle that never ends. Like, it always feels very repetitive when a coach is sacked and a new one comes in, and even if it is an interim spell, there's a burst of energy suddenly from players who look like they'd lost it only a few days later, or a few days before. But the reality is, Man United, I still think, have deficiencies as a football team. They did beat Leicester, who haven't been good this year. It's not like they went and absolutely smashed Man City or Tottenham or Arsenal. You know, they smashed a team that are near the bottom of the Premier League. So I think some context is there. And, you know, if you look at their form in recent weeks before Ten Hag was sacked, you know, losing away at West Ham, defensively, they've been at times quite poor. I think a lot of those midfield deficiencies, the way they're exposed in transition has remained the case. Very muddled, very confused. And I think their biggest problem so far this year has been offensively. They've missed a lot of big chances, level with Spurs actually for the most big chances missed in the Premier League. For their XG, they're sick, 14.8, but they've massively underperformed their XG. Now, you could look at that as a negative. You could look at that as something where they have a real problem finishing chances, especially when Diego Dallo is literally presented with an open goal and he somehow manages to put it over the bar. I mean, did he do it accidentally on purpose? Frustration with Erik ten Hag? You never know, but clearly offensively they have massive problems. Now, we know with Chelsea last year under Pochettino in the first half of the year, we had similar problems. Like our XG was very high, we were creating good looks at goal. And over the course of the season, I was always a big believer that that would balance itself out. Eventually it did, but it did take quite a while. Whether that is something that if you're a Man United fan or you're looking at Man United and you say over the course of the season, if they keep on making that quality of opportunity, eventually the goals will come. And maybe that's the analysis. But then I guess that kind of defends Ten Hag a little bit more than maybe he should be defended, you know, because then the argument would be, why would you get rid of a coach who was creating you good opportunities? But, you know, I think that there is that factor too. They have good talent in their team. I mean, I think that Bruno Fernandes has always been a productive Premier League player. Even though leadership point of view, I don't think he's been an amazing captain for them. Marcus Rashford blows hot and cold. We know this as a Chelsea fan. Like he has always been a little bit of a menace to us. He seems like at times he kind of shows up against Chelsea a bit like Man United. Garnacho did have a good midweek game, but, you know, is still a very raw, wide player. He reminds me a little bit of Mudryk in the sense that, you know, he's someone that's still really lacking range, but, you know, does have quality and did score against Chelsea last year. They've obviously have Xerxes, Højlund, who, you know, two young strikers who are very much finding their feet still and not, you know, very much cementing their places as centre forwards. So it's a weird game because I just cannot, as a Chelsea fan, even if it is a little bit illogical, I don't think it is illogical, but it's hard not to just feel we do poorly against Man United and we can't win for the life of us at Old Trafford. And no matter what problems Man United have, no matter how many times I've looked at Man United's frailties defensively, the way they can shoot themselves in the foot, the way they can look inept at times in attack and defensively being open, and the creative strengths we have at our disposal, you cannot help but feel maybe the stars are aligning negatively against Chelsea here. Not in a conspiratorial way, just in the fact that Ten Hag has left. They've had a good midweek. There maybe is a sense of unity a little bit more going into this game, and it's the chance for them to get their first big win of the season. However, that kind of signals that it's out of Chelsea's control. Chelsea can do nothing about that. The momentum is too much. The narrative has been set. What are you going to do? The game hasn't been played yet. Chelsea have an ability here to use this as an opportunity to really lay down a marker. I think mainly not because Man United are a title challenger. This isn't going away to Arsenal or going away to Liverpool or going away to Man City and winning. Obviously, it's not the same stature. But I think for ending that curse and also showing that Chelsea and Man United, who have in some ways been parallels of each other in terms of big clubs who've maybe lost their way, are very much putting themselves beyond Man United and saying, we're not there. We're not in that confusion anymore. We're going beyond that. We're challenging for the Champions League places this year. We're moving upwards. And I think for Maresca, it will be a big win. You know, winning at Old Trafford, no matter what anyone says, will still feel like a significant win. It will be one that is remembered because it is still Old Trafford. I know, of course, a lot of more teams have won there over the past decade, so it's not the place it used to be. As I said, it's not the stature of winning at Anfield or the Etihad, but at the same time, I think a lot of us would still see it as a significant win at the very least in what has been a difficult run of games. So the team, I think, is one of the easiest I'm predicting in recent weeks. I think it really is. I think it's mainly helped by, obviously, what happened in midweek. I think there are very few players who can really argue they should be starting this game. I think it's very clear what this team should be, and I think what the team will be. So let's get into my starting 11. I think Robert Sanchez will start in goal. Jorgensen, I mean, is doing absolutely nothing really to justify usurping Robert Sanchez. So Sanchez is very comfortable as number one, and I think Maresca even said before the Newcastle game that he's still number one. So he's still number one. And it's not like I can seriously sit here and tell that Jorgensen should be starting above him. No. The back four, I think in terms of the two fullbacks, I believe Reece James and Malo Gusto will be the two fullbacks. I just am a little... I don't know what side they're going to be on because, of course, he switched them in the past 2 games. Gusto was left back for Anfield, but then James was left back for Newcastle at home. I think there's an argument to keep Reece James there defensively, maybe against Marcus Rashford, but it's not like Gusto is a slouch defensively. And even Gusto at left back against Liverpool, I don't think had a bad game. It's just, you know, again, maybe what do you want, right? Because, of course, when you put James at left back, creatively, you are losing something. And I kind of look at Reece James going down that right flank, potentially where Man United the left side of their defence has not always been that strong, especially with the right wing of Noni Madueke. That two combining, it does excite me at Old Trafford. So that's maybe a big decision that Enzo Maresca has to make. It's not that Cucurella has been bad. I just think the fact that Cucurella played all of Wednesday's game, Malo Gusto rested, Reece James rested, I think these two come back in. Fofana and Cole will remain as a centre-back pairing. Again, there's no justification to make a change here. It's not like Badiashile, Tosin, Disasi have done anything to justify being above these two. It's not to say that, you know, I think Fofana has had some shaky moments, but I think this is the first choice back two at the moment. They just are so clear. Lavia, Caicedo, the first choice midfield two. Hopefully we see them at a big away ground for longer than we did at Anfield, and hopefully they can continue that momentum of kind of encouraging us as a central midfield two and partnership that can be built upon. Madueke, I think firmly the first choice right-sided player for Chelsea at the moment. Cole Palmer, obviously. Now, Mudryk is the only one who could really, out of performance in recent weeks, argue for some more minutes. I just think that Neto does enough because he set up the first goal. You know, I was having this conversation with Louis on the United preview pod where we spoke about, you know, Mudryk against Diego Dallo, going against that, you know, United defence and maybe opening up space and really terrorising them. You know, it kind of discounts the fact that Neto is a very quick player and can hit you on the break. And I just think composure-wise, in terms of end product, I just trust a lot more than Mykhailo Mudryk. So I think Neto will start. And of course, Nicholas Jackson is firmly Chelsea's first choice striker at the moment. He has to remain that because he's justified his place in terms of goal involvement, in terms of all-round play, in terms of the way Chelsea build up. And we massively lacked that, I think, in midweek against Newcastle. So that is my starting 11. Please let me know yours in the comments below. Will this be the moment Chelsea finally break the Old Trafford curse? We'll react to whether it is or not on Sunday. But please do share the show around, subscribe, like, rate and review the podcast, all of that good stuff. And I will see you again very soon. All the best.